In today's episode, Leading Trustworthy AI, David, Nick and Stefano discuss with Meeri Haataja, CEO of Sidot, a platform for teams that want to make their AI transparent and explainable and invite their end users into a dialogue around transparency. Meeri tells us what kind of leadership it requires when you're creating a new market and goes on to explain what trustworthy AI means in practice today and also in the future. Meeri Haataja, CEO and co-founder of Sidot, chair of the IEEE Ethics Certification Program for Autonomous and Intelligent Systems, former ethics lead of the National Finnish AI Program and affiliate at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. Welcome, Meeri.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
First of all, we'd like to talk to you a little bit about what's brought you here. So you co-founded Sidot 2 years ago, and previously you had positions in Telia, Accenture, and most recently as head of AI at OP Financial Group. What was the inspiration to leave the corporate world and become an entrepreneur?
Yeah, this is a question that has been asked from me quite many times because spending almost 20 years in corporations, it's a big step. Probably I didn't know how big the step is when I started my company, but I guess the main driver for me was that I had a chance to dive into this world of AI ethics and AI governance, see what is bubbling under. It became very clear for me that we are living times when we have moved from POC and pilot phase in AI into where we actually are seeing that the technology is impacting the societies and our everyday lives in a large scale. And many things need to change also in how do we manage and handle this. That was inspiring observation, and I wanted to be part of driving that change.
You said it was a bigger step than you'd anticipated. What's different or similar in leadership coming out of the corporate world, going into the entrepreneurship world?
There is no recipe for good entrepreneurship or startup leadership. You need to find it and build it with the team that you are working with for that company specifically. There are many things from the earlier corporate lives that apply very well to startups. For example, accountability as a theme. That's like something that has been very tangible and is critical in startups. Having the team where everyone takes accountability for their own part and does whatever it requires to make the success out of it and so forth.
That's a great answer. So let's throw the same question and surprise him to Stefano. So Stefano, you've gone from being more focused on the entrepreneurship world to now more focused on the corporate side. How about you? What differences do you see in the leadership required?
Well, I think I agree very much with what Meeri has said. Leadership is not specific to corporation or specific to startups. It's something which is sort of universal. And of course, inside a corporation, you have your shoulders a bit more covered. If you make a mistake, there is always a double check and a triple check that helps you. Avoiding that mistake has a huge impact. In the startups, there is not many things that can cover your shoulders. So whatever action you do is amplified multiple times more than in the corporate world. So I think it's maybe more important having good leadership in a startup only because the impact of your action is so much greater.
Yeah, that was so well said. I can fully agree with this one. Also, something that I've been thinking is that we are working in a market that is emerging market. Basically, we are very much creating also this market. So what I've been thinking is that the only thing that you can really rely on, think that this is what I know is that you don't know what is behind the corner. So the critical thing is that you're just super fast learner, learn about everything that you figure out. And that has become very important for me, learning by doing and sort of reflecting all the time. that like what we have learned from the discussions with our customers, from the like what we have tried, like piloted and so forth, and how should we shape our strategy and the directions where we are going with that one, because it's super hard to do long-term strategies in an environment which is like only shaping and you don't actually know where is it going. So learning is something that has become even much greater importance in this world.
And that is something which I believe in the world of startups is the thing that makes the difference between a successful founding team and an unsuccessful founding team. When you are starting a new company which tries to be innovative and tries to disrupt something, the only strategic advantage is your ability to learn, and ability to learn as fast as possible and connect this learning to your doings.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I think one important aspect is the recognition that this is marathon, not sprint. So creating a successful company is not the 2-year project. It's a longer journey, and you need to mentally orientate to that marathon, not a 2-year sprint.
In this opening discussion about leadership in startups, Meeri makes several interesting points. First of all, there's no recipe for good leadership in a startup. You need to find it and build it with the team that you're working with. Secondly, everyone needs to take accountability for their own part in a startup team and do whatever they need to do to make it a success. Next, super fast learning, especially learning by doing, becomes absolutely critical. And finally, the last point she makes there is really interesting, something often overlooked: a startup is a marathon, not a sprint. Sometimes we think, bang, new businesses come out of nowhere, but even with the likes of the Amazons and the Googles of this world, there is a long history behind them. Let's go on, and next Nick discusses with Meeri about adaptability and finds out what trustworthy AI means in practice. This could be a cue to bring Nick into the conversation. Nick, do you know anything about learning?
Very little, David. But one thing I did learn the other day was I was watching a TED Talk, and the TED Talk was by Natalie Fratto. I think she's a VC working in New York City, and she was talking about this concept of this adaptability quotient. So what is your appetite to be flexible, to be adaptable, to think on your feet, to just welcome and be ready and then react to constant change?
From a mental perspective, I think that's one of the most challenging also, because many of us have grown in this world where you can predict what is coming, and sort of like this feeling of security and whether it's financial security or like overall that how your life is going to be during the next year and so forth. So that's something that has been a growth process for me to adapt into this, that you don't basically know, and how to feel comfortable in that insecurity.
You describe your work as developing trustworthy AI, and that AI is creating new space, calls for new rules, and changes are needed in civic engagement and oversight. How do you see that showing up in practice, this trustworthy AI?
Yeah, it's a huge topic. and the words that we're using here is the European narrative on this whole thing. By the way, that was probably one of the drivers for me as well to go into this space, is that during my last couple of years with OP, I figured out that this European narrative on trustworthy AI, the idea that we are actually able to combine the AI innovation with the responsibility and doing that in a responsible manner. OPI was responsible for not only ramping up AI capabilities, but also for GDPR program on the business side. So in a very tangible manner, I had on my table these both angles, and those experiences over those couple of years over there got me convinced about that this is possible. That was the background for that. I really believe that this is the right way to go, and we need to seek for ways in a wider scale to realize this vision for trustworthy AI. What comes to this whole question of oversight and democracy and so forth, maybe the key drivers or thoughts around this is that technology is becoming more and more complex and influential at the same time. By complexity, I also mean that it's evolving all the time, continuously. So these are some factors that make it really challenging from a policy and regulation perspective. How can we manage and govern these technologies in a good manner? And that's probably the reason why we haven't seen yet specific regulation in this space, because it's definitely not an easy task. So from that perspective, I'm leaning more and more into this idea that we need to sort of crowdsource governance and oversight for these technologies. That's something that is happening already. We have civil society organizations and journalists who are doing like really good research on how technology is working and influencing our lives, and what are the issues and risks and challenges, problems, and so forth. I think different forms of this kind of new way of overseeing technology needs to happen and will happen in future. Possibly regulators could also better leverage that opportunity to get this kind of support from wider community.
A crucial insight from Meeri here. Combining AI innovation with responsibility cannot be left to one single organisation. The issues are too complex and AI is developing at a super high speed, so we need to use the power of the crowd to really make sure that we can keep tabs on the speed of change in the tech world. In a way, to crowdsource, as Meeri puts it, governance and oversight for these technologies.
Excellent. And one thing that we're interested in, Meeri, is your work with the cities of Helsinki and Amsterdam, the first two cities in the world to launch an open AI register. So what is an AI register, and how will that work in practice?
So the idea is simply to empower people, citizens, residents of these two capitals, to know how their lives are influenced with AI and algorithms. So how the city uses these new technologies, and that's part of democracy, that we need to have visibility into how government works and how public power authority is used. We also need to be able to protect our lives, rights as citizens in relation to government services. So that's the background, basically how to ensure these basic democratic rights in the context of AI algorithms that are, when taken into use in public sector. We have been, for example, seeing a lot of discussion around education and using algorithms to grade students, high school students, and so forth over the last few months. So that's one example about the importance of having enough visibility into how these algorithms work, because they actually impact all of our lives, and that's what we are looking for with the public AI registers. But basically, the concept is that there are websites for both of these cities where you can see a sort of library of different AI systems that are used by the city, and then when you're interested to know more about how do those work, you go and find standardized, sort of similar information across all those systems. So you will find use cases, how they are used, who are the accountable people, how can you contact these persons who are responsible for the system, what data does it use, how does the algorithm work, how have you considered how has the team considered the non-discrimination, equality aspects, and so forth. So yeah, that's the basic idea. The other side of the coin is that for cities and government AI teams and the whole supplier network who is creating these technologies for them, it's a AI register. It is a sort of AI governance tool. So it's a framework and means for having similar governance process for all of the projects, having similar documentation, agreeing same things on the accountabilities and so forth. So there are these two sides, but the target is really to secure this openness, providing enough information for citizens and providing them with rights to also question how AI is used by government.
Hi, it's Nick here. A quick pause from the podcast. Big thank yous for listening in today. We really hope you're enjoying it. If you have any feedback or maybe a brilliant guest suggestion for us, please get in touch. And if you think a friend, a colleague, an enemy would enjoy this too, please send them the link. Finally, in a very humble way, we also gratefully accept your 5-star ratings. Thank you. That sounds fascinating. So Amsterdam and Helsinki, already two of my favourite cities in Europe, as you know. How will this AI register, how will that make those two cities even better?
It will basically enable the citizens of these two cities to take part in this, how AI is being taken into use in the city. So there is a voice for every resident in the city. They can voice their opinion about how the city is using technology and helping make sure that the technology is used in a way that is good for the citizens. So that's really something very concrete and tangible. We have actually a survey out there. We asked that imagine a situation where these kind of public AI registers would be provided by governments or different government organizations, and how would that influence in practice. And the feedback from there was that obviously it provides better position or opportunity to control how the public organizations are using resources and public power. But what is super nice that we heard from that study as well is that almost all of the users and people who answered the survey said that it will increase the trust between the city or the government agency and the residents. So that's ultimately what is essential to develop technology, take into use new technologies in a way that you can retain the trust between the government, the residents.
Here, Meeri is pointing out the importance of creating an open feedback loop between public actors, cities and governments that use technology and artificial intelligence with citizens which see the results of the decisions made through these algorithms. And with this open feedback loop, creating more trust and improving the relationship between public authorities and private citizens.
It sounds like extremely important work, Mary. Thank you for describing that project for us. Thank you.
I was listening to you, Mary, and then there are two things that you said, and it's like approaching AI from both angles. One is this crowdsourcing, like sort of watchdog role that population can take in understanding, in controlling and guiding how the AI is used. And then the other one, which is providing the decision makers, the teams, and the people who are building and using the AI from the inside, tools to understand what's happening inside the algorithms. And of course, we have used algorithms for, a lot of time, for 20, 30, 40 years. But now machine learning is a different kind of algorithm, because there are things that happen inside machine learning that they are not so visible or clear even to the ones who are building the algorithm itself. So coming to my question, do you see that this crowdsourcing of let's say the feedback, do you see this feedback loop created from the crowdsourcing and going into the way how the teams are taking into account certain aspects of AI, even though they don't understand deeply what's happening inside, they still can tune some knobs and make sure that the results are actually more fair, more trustworthy, less discriminatory, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, exactly. That's, you described it really well. So we discussed about this whole importance of learning in the startup, and from startup leadership perspective. I think the same concept is what we are talking about here. When the complexity starts to be really, really large with regards to these new technologies and machine learning that we are applying to societal problems, they have societal social impacts that we didn't necessarily think of initially when building the system. So this fast issue spotting and learning loop becomes basically as critical as that loop is for any entrepreneur, like, trying to figure out how to make a successful company in this emerging market. You mentioned this word or like use the word watchdog, and that's what we like how we call these like civil society organizations who are and like maybe some journalists who are focused on discussing about these topics. And I think we would need to figure out a new term for this crowdsourced issue spotting and sort of like crowdsourced oversight, because the watchdog, it sounds a little bit scary. So how can we sort of reposition this whole concept of crowdsourcing feedback, crowdsourcing identification of risks, and make it into this sort of positive, collaborative environment where the target is really for all parties to identify problems quickly, and the companies being committed, or like government organizations, the AI teams being committed to fix the problems as we find them and so forth. So I think there is a need also to sort of rebrand this whole idea of watchdogs, because it can be a very positive source and solution for these problems that we have on table, but sort of like we could brand it better to make it more attractive for companies.
Notice the beautiful parallel that Meeri is using here, a parallel between an entrepreneur learning about the market and the public sector AI algorithms, which are learning about the effects of the decisions made by the AI on the population through a feedback loop her company is enabling.
I don't know if you know the story about reCAPTCHA, this methodology that helps machines to understand whether you are a human or not, especially used to in logins inside pretty much everywhere nowadays. They started thinking, what can we use these 10-50 seconds that the user is waiting the page to log in for? And then they started digitalizing books at that time. So anytime that you complete a reCAPTCHA, you're helping digitalizing a book. And that is a form of crowdsourcing, essentially. Then later on, Google acquired reCAPTCHA, and they started training their machine learning algorithms with that methodology again. So the tool asks you, tell me where you see traffic lights, tell me where you see cars, tell me where you see this kind of stuff. And they're essentially training machine learning algorithms with that. So I don't know if this kind of perspective helps you reframe a bit the problem of the watchdog, but it's a different way to think about the crowdsourcing and helping machines to make more sense of who we are.
Yeah, and that's something that when we talk about making AI explainable for an AI-based recommendations and decisions explainable for the individuals, the sort of subjects of those recommendations and decisions, there's a great opportunity to learn through providing better visibility into what's the explanation, how did we do this decision, and then not only tell that in one direction, but also get feedback from the user on how does it sound to you, and sort of like it's a totally new source for contribution from the users, and it's empowered basically by the explanations and the explainability. That's something that I'm super excited to work with corporations to introduce this new source of like reinforcing and teaching the algorithms into becoming better by opening a little bit how does it work and then getting the feedback from the users.
I'm stuck with thinking what's a better way of describing crowdsourced. Open sourced, collaboratively sourced. I don't know. I remember last time we spoke, we were talking a little bit about ESG investments. You'd like to open up something about what's the opportunity there?
Mm-hmm. Jumping into this whole ESG space, there are these different drivers that make this new space growingly important. So there might be, for companies using AI, there might be getting pressure or questions from their customers that how are you considering the ethics aspects of your technology and so forth. Companies might be waiting for regulating or expecting that there might be coming some regulation in this space, and that might give them good reason to act on this space. But what I believe will be will be very much growing importance is also what investors are thinking about these social impacts. And that comes to this whole boom of ESG funds and responsible investment, and how investors are considering the ESG aspects in their investment decisions, whether those are ESG focused funds or in general any other investment decisions. ESG is definitely something that has been booming very much during the last couple of years.
Is that a worldwide boom? We've just been talking about Helsinki and Amsterdam, for example. We have a big focus here in the Nordics on transparency and ESG issues.
No, I'm following North American and European media on these topics, and it's definitely wide scale, like applies to both of these really large markets. So I think we are talking about global developments here. And the interesting question is that while the focus has been in ESG very much in the environmental aspects, and that's like years and years of work that people have been doing in driving this whole environmental considerations in the investment side, but now probably also due to COVID this year and the social impacts and influences that we have been seeing over this year, the focus seems to be going more into this social aspect of companies, social impacts. And now that is super interesting from AI governance, AI ethics perspective. Investors are becoming more and more interested on what are the social impacts of the companies that they are investing in. And that comes very quickly into this space. And the question is, how should we measure the AI governance, AI ethics when we are considering how companies are considering the environmental, social, and governance aspects, and how do they communicate these to potential and current investors?
So if I'm an ESG investor, what's the question that I should be asking?
You have probably been asking questions regarding, for example, how privacy has been taken care of in the company that you're considering to invest. But what are the social impacts, like how the technology is used by the companies or to whom you are selling your products, and how does it influence? What are the risks related to the social aspects of your products in the technology space? That is basically something that is not, we don't have metrics for all these aspects yet.
I have no way of understanding the answer then.
Actually, it's an ongoing work, is to figure out how should we measure the AI ethics and governance aspects as part of those ESG metrics. Because privacy is there, some other aspects are there, but not necessarily, like not in the extent that those should be there. So we need to bring in other aspects that haven't been covered yet. So this is about sort of like building bridges between the AI, the trustworthy AI ethics space and the ESG space. Those are like very different communities at the moment. So that's the bridge that we need to build.
In this last point in the AI discussion, Meeri gives us a glimpse into the future. Investors are increasingly interested in the social impact of the companies they're investing in, and this is a work in progress, defining how we should measure AI governance and AI ethics. And once again, that work involves bringing together disparate actors by connecting trustworthy AI and the environmental, social and governance space.
Meeri, given everything you've told us today about corporate life, your brilliant work at the moment as a leader, an entrepreneur, as a future optimist, I think you describe yourself as a kind of future optimist, something like that. I may have got that wrong. What does that mean? And how are you so optimistic about the future?
You know, the reason why maybe you took it from my LinkedIn, or like, I don't know, where did you take it, but it might be so.
School friends.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel that when we are working in the space where we are very much talking about risk management and issues related to the impacts of technology and so forth, somehow I feel that the space is like, and the discussion many times can sound a little bit negative or future pessimistic. That's something that is super important for me, that in general, I've been spending whole my life innovating with technology, and I truly believe that we have so much to gain from and benefit from these new technologies. So that's the underlying sort of attitude that I have. So not to stop the development and like stop taking technology into use in new areas, but help doing that in a right manner, in a manner where we put enough emphasis so that we understand better what are the influences and are able to better manage the risks related to those. So that's sort of the overall underlying attitude regarding this future, being future positive.
So that positive narrative that you have for the future, how does that play out in your everyday work?
When we discuss about this, that you don't know what is behind the corner, it's like, I guess if you don't know, then it's better to choose being positive regarding that one, because that just makes your life much happier.
Brilliant answer. Meeri, thank you so much.
Is then optimism a choice that you make every day, or is it your natural way of being?
I think for me it's pretty natural, but still, I think no one can always be positive in just any situation. So many times it's also an attitude and a sort of like a conscious choice that I choose not to fear, or I choose not to be taken down by some critics, or I choose to learn from these critics that I get, or yeah. So I would say both.
So I'm going to end things there with a quote from Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. Optimism is normal, but some fortunate people are more optimistic than others.
Hey listener, it's Stefano here. Since you got until here, we think that you might like the podcast. It would mean so much if you could leave us a 5-star review and share this with as many of your friends as possible. This will help us be discovered and spread the news. Can you just take 5 minutes and do that for us? Thank you.